Before I start, the story of jobs to me personally has like really resonated to me. I remember at Third Point, Apple, there was a rumor that Apple was going to launch the Apple car. And we were trying to think of like, what would Apple do if they wanted to go launch a car? And I remember just going through, we're like LiDAR systems, like chip systems, what else? Like what are all the components that go inside a car, and how do we go figure out, is this company actually investing in the types of job roles to go, hire all of the engineers that they needed for the car? And turns out we looked around for a while, we tried to build our own scrapers, and eventually we came across this company called LinkUp. And then, he gave me 2 terabytes of data and an Elasticsearch server. I was like, cool, like, we're 4 people here, we're gonna try and mine this. Anyways, so that was like a lot of the genesis behind it. I am excited to announce the RavenPack Jobs Analytics product. So what is Jobs Analytics? Like LinkUp has over 200 million job postings across 60,000 companies over time. They have most of the US top 1,000 companies covered. If they're not covered, it's probably like a REIT or a business development company that doesn't actually have any jobs on their website. It's got a lot of the EU, like top 1,000 covered, and Toby has promised us that he is greatly accelerating the coverage for EU and global companies. One of the things I really liked about this data set, because we looked a lot for job postings data sets all over the world, is that when you look at 3M, and I'll give you a small example, 3M on LinkedIn or job aggregator website will advertise 500 job posts. 3M on their company website will advertise 20,000 job postings. So, we were trying to look for like who has the rights applied directly from the company rather than aggregating job listings from a bunch of different aggregators that only provide you a small sliver of the hard to hire roles that are usually sponsored. So, we worked with Toby and team through the last 1 year, lots of work. What we have like mapped out inside the data set, you'll hear me talk a lot about taxonomies. I kind of obsess over it. Even at Revere, we were building it. So we've tracked over 137,000 hiring locations. These are down to the exact cities where people are disclosing where they're hiring. For anyone that has used or looked at the labor job markets, there's a taxonomy called the ONET taxonomy. It's like produced by the Bureau of Labor Government something. It stopped at like 1,400 nodes, and I'll show you during the breakout session later on, but we realized that that was kind of limiting. So like the first thing we wanted to go do is, can we extend the taxonomy? Instead of giving me retail operations specialist, I'd like to see a warehouse worker as compared to a cashier clerk, because I feel like there's a lot more information there. So, Kevin and his product team have toiled, and they've created this brand new like position like taxonomy that extends the standard ONET classification. And then what we found is there is so much information inside a job description, right? So when you go inside a job description, they give you what are the, like the desired skills, what are the qualifications, what are the benefits that they offer. In the US now, at least starting in 2022 and 23, they're going to start offering the compensation ranges, which a lot of states have started to offer. So there is just a ton of information inside the job description. So we created our own taxonomy. It's called it's the jobs taxonomy, but we've essentially mapped out over 4,000 different entities that cover things such as benefits, compensation options, qualifications, and skills. I'll be going through all of that. Those 2 graphs there are just a summary of how, like the LinkUp, it's the total count of the number of companies covered by LinkUp right now over time. All right, so the agenda for like today, I'm going to steal Peter's thunder because this is really his team that does all the beautiful work, and I just get to stand here and talk about it. But I'll be talking to you about one basic signal that we've created. This jobs data set was ready 4 weeks ago, and in just 4 weeks, the team has already seen a lot, and we're getting pretty excited about the potential here. But I'll be focusing on the number of jobs listings that a company has on their website every day and what kind of signals you can create on that. Then I'll be talking about, can we look at where these companies are hiring, create some like location vectors, if you may, and say if they're hiring for places they generally hire the same amount, then maybe that's a great place for us to like refine the signal a little bit better. Then I'll be talking about companies hire for a lot of different positions. Is it important to see the core, if the core of the business, if you're a retail company, you probably have a lot of clerks. Should we just be like focusing on the core of your business, or look at all the jobs that you also offer as part of the total count? Finally, that slide should have said like number 2, but like the second point is we go inside the job description and say, what can we do with these skills? So I'll be giving you a quick lens into the skills taxonomy and what you can do with it. Okay, so the million-dollar question, at least for us, is, does hiring growth drive alpha? So like what we have here is we created sector-neutral portfolios of the US top 1,000 mid to large companies. And we said, we just like computed the most basic signal, which is the monthly year-over-year change of the number of jobs active in the company. So it's a growth signal. And it's surprisingly fast-moving. We thought it would be a little slower. There are probably ways of like normalizing this. But what we did is, if you build a daily rebalance like portfolio using the monthly year-over-year change in jobs active, technically, it turns out that companies with higher growth outperform the companies with lower growth. And this is intuitive. I don't know if it's causal yet. We haven't got all the way deep in there, but it's intuitive to me. The turnover is about 20%, so it's kind of like an effective weekly holding pattern, holding period. And then we wanted to go slightly deeper. So the IR of this basic portfolio, and if you know RavenPack, and like Peter's been really good at this, we'll start very basic, and then over the years we'll start going a lot deeper in this. This is our first study. The IR was about 1, and the annualized returns was about 2%. There's lots of ways you can do things with that. Next slide. Okay. So like this one is, as I said, every job has the name, like the title of the job, the company that it's for, and the locations that it's offered. This gets pretty complicated. We have a lot of dedupe techniques and stuff, which go into this. But essentially, one of the questions we had was, jobs generally are hiring at a certain growth rate in certain, like regions. You can define region down to the city level. You can go up to the regional level or states, like, depending on which country you are. You can go up to the country level. We picked state. And we created these like location vectors. And it said, okay, generally speaking, you hire X percentage in this vector, in this state or in this region, and it grows at this rate. If I see the similar amount of growth the next time we look, so it's a monthly like portfolio, and we are computing the cosine distance of these hiring location vectors. And what we found here was kind of interesting. There's probably a lot more research that we want to do into this, but companies that are hiring for more jobs in places they generally hire for tend to do better more on the long side, not on the short side. So the story doesn't work on both legs of it. So so in the next slide, if we create a like double sort on the long portfolio, and we say, okay, let's focus on for the long portfolio, just the companies that are growing in their jobs active, and they're growing actively in places they generally hire for. What would that do to the portfolio? And as you can see here, we slightly improved the signal, like the returns of the portfolio. It's got an IR of 1.1, returns of 2.9%.
Aakarsh, Marcos and Charles will probably ask why. Why do you think, why is it better when you're hiring the same location?
So we actually have started to do research into the sector by sector breakouts of it. And what we're realizing is that when companies decide to go to brand new regions, either they strongly have a hypothesis that they can take their same product market fit and go to a brand new place, but that doesn't always play out. A lot of companies try to hire in international locations and stuff because they found success in the areas that they generally do it. So our hypothesis today, again, I would love to have that causal model and test a lot of this stuff, but the hypothesis was, can we look at the core of the business and say, if we just focus on the core of the business where they generally sell to, what does that do? And we found it works better on the long side, not as good on the short side. So there's no like negative alpha, I guess, if you don't go international. It's more if you go international and you succeed and you keep hiring there. And I'm saying international, this is across, these vectors were like constructed across all hiring regions that the company has. All right, so let's take that same idea and say, okay, we have a total count of the number of jobs offered, like by this company. As I said, we have a jobs taxonomy, so we take, I forget, there are like millions of different ways people disclose jobs. I'll show you an example right now after this. But if we take all those jobs and we normalize it to a taxonomy, what would we get? And what we did here was saying, can we reduce the noise in the signal by focusing, again, on the jobs you generally hire for. So what you see in that graph there is under retail trade. Now, we only have access to FactSet sectors. I know Sean Carr is there somewhere. If you ever want to give us Rubik's, just let me know. But like on the FactSet sectors, in like retail trade, they generally hire for business operations specialists. These are a whole range of job types that are classified according to the bureau like that. In like technology services, for obvious reasons, most of the jobs are under computer occupations. So basically now what we're doing is saying, can we focus on the jobs you generally hire for, or the job taxonomies that you generally hire for? What would it do with the signal? So by just reducing the scope of where we're looking for the job types, we're seeing that the signal, it's a slightly different signal, but it's got an IR of 1.2, annualized return of 2.5. And my entire goal here is to give you ideas. This is a data set that is pretty new to us too. There's a white paper coming out in 2 weeks. There are about 6 white papers we've planned for in the next 6 months. So this is kind of our first lens into this incredibly rich data set. So what I just described was if the job just said, I hired for a computer engineer in this region, so in like San Jose, California, and yeah, I think that's it. Oh, and it's Apple, sorry. So the three kind of dimensions at the top of a job posting. Let's go a little bit deeper now, right? So if you look at it, what a job posting actually has, there's a lot of data that they're actually telling you about who they are, what kind of employees they want, what kinds of skills and benefits are they interested in, what are the perks that they offer. There's a ton of information there so here's just an example of Apple is now starting to hire MLAI annotation analysts, because I think they believe that data is only as good as what you put in. I mean, the model's only as good as the data you annotate. So in addition to the things up top, we're seeing a lot more tags of things that are being detected inside the job.
And of course,
yeah.
For a sec, if you go back to that slide, I mean, Toby knows this better, right? None of these companies follow any standards, right? And there's no standard for a job post. Everyone has a...
It's the mythical dream, but it's never happened in 20 years, and there's always constant new iteration and improvements, and there are trends that happen, but it is very unstructured data.
It's truly unstructured document. It's raw, and it has perhaps some about information that relates to the company, but skills, benefits, duties, all that could be written in any way, right? They don't. It's even just pure text. There aren't even any tags whatsoever. No?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Which is what, again, is really what is so exciting about our partnership with RavenPack, is to be able to apply your technology to that unstructured data in a way that there is no way we were capable of applying that. And we knew there was a massive amount of signal there, but it was always sort of out of reach for us as a company, which is what is really exciting about what we're doing around this jobs intelligence.
And these highlights those are the entities, right? Maybe
those are all of the entities that we detected. So I highlighted this to show you this, right? So what you saw on the previous doc is basically, what are we actually detecting? What are the amount of entities that we're grabbing from a raw document? But then, you've heard me talk about taxonomies. This is our jobs taxonomy. Turns out, under like benefits and compensation, you can break that down into a whole bunch of different subcategories, and it gets a lot more interesting than that. Like, there is an internal version of this that we've extended it out even further and said, you know what, under benefits and compensation, are they offering stock-based comp or not? Under the employee perks, are they generic perks, or are they like family-based, like perks? And then just today we were having a discussion at the coffee break about, hey, companies that remove perks from their job postings, maybe that's, maybe there's alpha there because like it's indicating that they don't want to offer all the free benefits, or maybe they're not, like their margins are being hit or something like that. The same thing applies, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one thing that's so interesting, and you just alluded to that, but what's so incredible about the taxonomy that RavenPack's developed is, you mentioned the ONET, which is a decent classification, but provides massive amounts of more granularity. The other thing it does is it's updated more frequently. So ONET is lagging quite a bit behind the emergence of new jobs and new skills and new things that are popping up, and that pace of change in the world of work today is accelerating dramatically. So to have a taxonomy that is much more comprehensive, much more granular, and updated much more real time, and then when you get into the kinds of things that are embedded in the job descriptions themselves, the pace of change, even just in the last year, 2 years, the amount of change, the way companies are hiring, the dynamic between candidates and employers, it is incredible what is happening in and around talent and talent acquisition and hiring and employees, and it's this taxonomy that really lends itself to generating insights into what's happening.
Yeah, and it's, like Peter alluded to it during his conversation, we want to provide building blocks. And we actually think that a lot of, you guys in this room would be able to figure out much more intuitive, smarter, stable signals from these building blocks. For example, under technical skills, you can break that up by sales and marketing skills, cybersecurity skills, and see like, is there suddenly a company hiring for a lot of cybersecurity specialists? Maybe something's going on with this company that they haven't really disclosed yet. There's a lot of ways to slice and dice it. We'd be more than happy to work with you or talk. Like during the breakout session, I'll be going into the details there so you can see exactly what we've grabbed. Just to give you an idea of the size of this archive, as I keep saying, it's like a pretty large archive even for us. We have detected 538 million entities over time. And then most of the entities that we've detected are in the qualifications area. And within the qualifications area, a lot of them are under the skills. Within skills, we've broken it out into soft skills, which are you a leader? Are you, I'll walk you through some examples because it's pretty hilarious how people disclose certain things. And then you have technical skills and technology skills. What kind of software products do you care about? Amazon, AWS versus Azure. I have a lot of good analysis there because just those mentions actually a pretty good indication of what those companies are actually disclosing or which companies are asking for jobs that require those skills. So the first strategy on the skills side, and I keep caveating this, that this is our first study, we'll be doing a lot more here, is we wanted to say, if you just counted the number of qualifications and skills offered across all jobs by a company over time, is that another kind of dimension of looking at either the diversity of jobs you have or hiring growth? This is kind of correlated to the hiring growth signal, but it's not exactly. So what we found is a uniquely different way of saying, if I just looked inside the job descriptions and the diversity of that, is that an indication of you're growing as an organization and you're creating a lot of diverse skills and new types of jobs that require diverse skills? AR of like 1.1, annualized return of 2%. This was a good slide because this kind of describes to you. So you have your hard skills, which is are you a computer engineer? Do you have a bachelor's degree? All of those things. But then you also have these like qualitative. Here's what we'd like our employees to be. We'd like you to be high on communication, or we'd like you to be extremely like disciplined and detail oriented. So what you're seeing here is we took one part of the ONET taxonomy. So it says architectural and engineering occupations, computer and mathematical occupations, and sales-related occupations. And what you're seeing there is basically the percentage of the types of soft skills which are mentioned in all of these different occupational groups. For obvious reasons, I don't know if I can use this, there you go. Like sales and sales-related occupations are, please be good at teamwork. It's very, very important to us. And leadership is pretty important, and for obvious reasons, communication skills have to be really good. And if you compare what this vector looks like compared to a computer and mathematical occupations, pretty different. So like one of the things, and again, early research is let's look at the soft skills. And we're trying to get back to the core of the business. If you generally hire for a set of soft skills, and if you keep hiring for those soft skills over time, if we create these vectors, we run the quotient similarity, and we just rank order within these sectors, what would that do? So as the last strategy, we just looked at soft skills and the similarity of soft skills over time. And as you can see here, the same kind of, it's a slightly different dimension to the same hiring growth story. And this one was a monthly portfolio. I'll let Peter go into the details when we talk about it during a paper, but it had just a very different perspective on the same data. So to end with, and I'll end on this note, if you combine the weights of each of those different approaches of looking at hiring growth, so you have the core hiring growth signal, you have the hiring growth that is modeled out on the location similarities, you have hiring growth that is modeled out on the top positions you hire for, and then you go into the total skill diversity and skill count, and then just looking at the soft skills, we added up the weights of all of those different portfolios, created a new sector neutral portfolio, and now we're seeing annualized returns of 2.7%, but a much higher IR. We also did something very standard, which is then we regressed this against RavenPack's 10-factor model. It's not exactly what you get on the street, but it's pretty close. And if we just focus on the errors or the residuals, we're seeing an increase, like a factor-adjusted score is about 1.82 IR. So in conclusion, and I don't know if I ran out of time or not, but in conclusion, we just focused on hiring growth, and the hiring growth signal, month-over-month change was really good. It actually performed extremely well in 2021, 2022. If you just try to focus on the location vectors and the position vectors, there's a lot of information there that we can be mined, or that can be mined. By looking inside the job, and if you look at just the qualifications and the skills that a company is mentioning, it's actually telling you a lot about intent, about where they want to hire. And one of those examples are companies hiring for similar soft skills. If you create portfolios out of them, you have unique signal. Now, what I'd like to leave you with, because this is kind of where I know the research team is pretty excited, is we haven't even looked at the jobs deleted, when they take a job away from their website, what does that mean? We haven't looked at jobs active. It's a computation where over a period of time, how many jobs generally do you have? Because these jobs get updated every day. There's a really cool metric, which is time to fill, which is it easy for you to hire? Is it not easy for you to hire? Is it correlated to all of the supply and demand issues that we faced? We don't know. There's a lot of work that we want to do inside the skill vectors and the qualification vectors, and this is where we want to take that taxonomy, expand it, create multiple different permutations of it, and see how we can mine it. And finally, I know that I'm pretty excited about jobs applications in the macro sense, because there is a lot here. In fact, Toby just sent me a small article about how jobs is a very good predictor for NFP. And we haven't even started doing work there, but you can imagine this is a pretty good gauge of demand across 60,000 companies over time. And finally, we are a news company. We do detect a lot of things about jobs and labor issues and things like that in the news. We haven't even scratched the surface there, and that's kind of where if a company announces a layoff at some point, is there some indication in the jobs data before they actually made that announcement? We haven't even scratched the surface there, but there's a lot of hypotheses that we're working through.